Hi everybody and welcome to another Heel Heat Top 10. My name is George Coles. This is my tag team partner, Axe.
Thanks, Crush. Gary Rhodes, everybody.
And this topic of the top 10 this time is going to be top 10 guys not in the WWE Hall of Fame. And normally I'd let you start off, but Gary hotly debated the guy at number 10, so I'm going to go ahead and say it. It's a guy I fought to get on this list, our number 10 guy, the Ultimate Warrior. Now, I didn't fight for him because he's a favorite of mine. I fought for him because of his accomplishments in the late 80s. Anyway. I mean, the guy was a top draw at one of the hottest points in wrestling history. I think he deserves to be on this list. And, you know, like I said, it wasn't because of the guy. I'm not a fan of his work. I'm not a fan of him. I just think his accomplishments are deserving the Hall of Fame.
Number 9 on the list. Are you done gushing over your guy?
Go ahead, man.
All right. Don't get me wrong. I mean, he did accomplish a lot. Anyways, number 9, one of the best thinkers in the business, Jake the Snake Roberts. Would you agree on that?
I agree, Jake's a guy, he's one of the few guys on this list that never had a major championship.
And the thing with Jake, he wasn't the best worker in a ring. He wasn't the best body. But his mind, he was leaps and bounds ahead of everybody else. He's what CM Punk is now.
And Jake's a guy, he absolutely is one of the best in-ring psychologists there has ever been. I'd put him right up there with the likes of Raven, with the likes of CM Punk, with the likes of The Undertaker, and the fact that he can... You don't even have to have a build-up to the match for him to be able to tell you a story and draw you in from the beginning to the end.
You talk about the Taker, his match they had at WrestleMania, if Jake was more into wanting to stay, and they actually built that match up the way it should have been, that could have been the second main event of that pay-per-view.
Yeah. And I think Jake is well deserving. I think the thing that's hampered him is some of his drug issues. Now, speaking about guys that have drug issues, our number 8 is we're putting in groups, just like the WWE does. We're going to put in a group of 3 guys. Michael P.S. Hayes, Buddy Jack Roberts, and Terry Bam Bam Gordy, better known as the Fabulous Freebirds.
Never put the 4th one in?
Who, Jimmy Jam Garvin?
Yeah,
or Bad Street?
I would do Jimmy Jam Garvin, and I'd at least do the 4. Jimmy Jam Garvin was more part of it when I started watching them.
Well, the thing of it is, the core group was the 3. Jimmy Jam was a replacement, and I think if they were to go into the Hall of Fame, it would go as Bam Bam, Buddy, and P.S.
I don't know. I think if they were going to go in, I think they're all 4 going to go in. That's my opinion of it, because Michael P.S. Hayes, and
Jimmy Jam
Garvin were really tight towards the end of their wrestling careers. I just think that it would be the 4 of them.
Okay. I mean, that's your opinion. They revolutionized. They're the first. I don't know if they're the first team, but they're the team that popularized the Freebird rule, where 3 guys would defend a tag team title, and a lot of teams have used it since then. But they were the first. They're one of the first to come out with theme music. They did their own theme song. In the World Class days, they were the top heels in World Class for a long time.
I got a question for you. Were they the reason that NWA made the 6-man championship?
I'm not 100% sure.
Because I know they didn't have it before them.
I think the NWA 6-man was originally for Dusty and the Road Warriors.
Oh.
But I don't know. I can't honestly tell you. I haven't done enough history on the 6-man title, because it was a title that they would use and then not use for a long time, and then all of a sudden it'd be back. Kind of like the WWF light heavyweight title.
I got you. All right. Well, Our number 7 guy is probably, we talked about tacticians, and this man here is just one of the best minds in the business. Again, it's like I'm getting all the smart ones. Brian Pillman.
Well, we gotta make you feel smart, don't
Hey,
we?
smart Mark, baby. Anyways,
Oh, you're a
Brian Pillman, he revolutionized the light heavyweight division in WCW, or the NWA was it then, or NWO when it was NWA when it was then.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, it was WCW.
was it?
Yeah.
I can't remember if he was still in NWA days or not.
No, it was WCW. They still had the NWA titles, but
Okay.
it was already WCW.
But anyways, he was one of the first Americans that actually set that
He's a
division.
Canadian.
Well,
Actually, he's from Cincinnati.
are you done?
I'm just kidding.
He was the first American to revolutionize that industry before Shawn Michaels.
And he had the first match on Monday Nitro. Plus, he was a big part of, at the beginning of the Attitude Era. Sadly, his life ended prematurely, but the guy, I don't think he got to reach his full potential, but he had enough of his potential that I think he definitely deserves to be in the Hall of Fame.
And if you don't believe that, look at some of the matches he had back in the day against Jushin Thunder Liger. You know, those were like I said, revolutionary, and they were.
Hey, even matches with guys like Scotty Flamingo, who went on to become Raven, Johnny B. Bad, Z-Man Tom Zink had some of his best matches against him. I mean, Pillman, in my opinion, I also think he's one of the better horsemen there ever has been. So I think he definitely deserves to go in. And now our number 6 guy is a guy that I think gets overlooked way too much. The Big Boss Man, Ray Traylor. Whether he was Big Bubba Rogers in the NWA territory days, whether he was Boss Man in the first run where he played the heel then turned face because he was so, the fans got so into the character that they turned him face. He left, went to WCW, had a couple of crappy gimmicks there, and ended up being in the NWO for a little while as Ray Traylor. He was the Guardian, the Boss, a couple other little stupid things they tried to work, which never really worked. And then he came back to the WWE as part of the corporation and was a huge part of that storyline.
Another thing to mention when we go back to his first run in WWE, when he was a babyface there, I mean, he was a close runner-up behind your Ultimate Warrior and your Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, I mean
he
he
was
was a big
like,
draw.
I'd say at one point he was probably the number 3 babyface in the company.
Yeah, I mean the guy was a draw, and the guy, for a big guy, he was a heck of a worker. He could work decent matches. He's a guy you could trust to go out there and not fuck it up.
And back then, that's what you really had to rely on.
Yeah.
All right. Our number 5 is a tag team, one of the best tag teams of all time. But in singles competition, both men were very good. The British Bulldogs.
And the reason we're putting them in as a tag team is just simply both the guys deserve to go in, and we don't want to waste 2 spots on them.
Exactly. And, you know, you look at the matches that the Bulldogs had against the Hart Foundation. They had the Killer Bees, Demolition.
Sheik and Volkov.
Exactly. These guys were so far ahead of their time that you see some of the guys from, what is it, American Wolves?
Yeah.
They remind you so much of their style.
And well, the thing of it is that Dynamite Kid is one of the most imitated wrestlers in the history of wrestling. And the British Bulldog is no slouch either. I mean, the British Bulldog is a hell of a talent on his own, or Davey Boy Smith. And as a team, like you said, they were one of the better tag teams there were. I think the stuff that them and the Hart Foundation were doing was some of the better stuff at the WWE at the time.
They weren't as cartoony.
No.
And when they had a match, that match was going to be an awesome match. I mean, I've never seen a bad match between the 2 tag teams together.
No. And I've never seen, actually, I don't think I've ever seen a bad Dynamite Kid match.
No.
And not too many bad Davey Boy Smith matches either.
I can't think of
a couple later on his career when he had the back problems, but that's understandable. I mean, both had great singles run. Davey Boy more of his run, or Dynamite was more in Japan and Canada. In Japan, he's a fucking legend. He's one of the most legendary characters there. Davey Boy, I mean, he was a guy, I don't understand why he was never made a world champion. He was over enough to be world champion. He had to build for it. He could have been WCW or WWE champion at any point.
Well, I met Davy Boy when I was a kid, and I tell you what, he was one of the nicest guys I ever met in my life. And he was a huge man. I was probably 12 years old, and I was a small kid. And you see this giant of a man, and he was just as genuine and as nice as can be.
Exactly. And they definitely, both of them definitely deserve to be on here. Whether they separate them or put them on as a team, they both deserve to be in. Now, our number 4 guy is a guy that I believe they want to put into the Hall of Fame, but he's being held back for a different reason. Owen Hart. Owen's wife, the rumor is that Vince would love to put Owen Hart in the Hall of Fame, but Owen's wife does not want Owen's name related to anything in wrestling. She don't want action figures. She don't want him on the video games. She don't want him in the Hall of Fame. She don't want him on the DVDs. I mean, she has. I guarantee you, if she would say go ahead and run with it, Vince would have an Owen Hart DVD retrospective out. He'd have him in the Hall of Fame. He'd have everything. I mean, he'd be a playable character in the video games.
Well, you look at the career Owen had. I mean, he went from being, he had shit gimmicks. The Blue Blazer was, I'm talking about the original run, not where he died. Then he went to High Energy. Well, he was New Foundation with Jim Neidhart. Then Neidhart left, and he was High Energy with Coco Beware. Then they turned him on one of the, he went from being one of the lower range baby faces to turning into a top heel just by kicking his brother's leg out from under him. And the match they had at WrestleMania 10 was one of the best matches technically you will ever see.
I honestly think the '94 SummerSlam cage match is the best SummerSlam match between Owen Hart and Bret Hart. The best SummerSlam match there's ever been at that event.
Damn.
I mean, I think Owen's a guy that he was a great singles wrestler, and I think he was on the path to become a world champion. I mean, if you look at the guys right after Owen died that became world champion, you had guys like Austin that he had a built-in feud with, guys like Triple H that he had a built-in feud with. I mean, he was a guy that was going to be in the mix for the world championship, in my opinion.
Well, I want to bring up the one thing about the Bret Hart match that he had at WrestleMania. I watched an interview one time, and it was Bret Hart was interviewing about that match. And they already had the match planned weeks in advance, how they were going to work it. But Bret's called him a couple days before WrestleMania and says, no, we're going to change it all up. Because if we do this match, fans are going to be cheering you too much, and your heel turn is going to turn to shit because you're just so good. Because he was planning on doing a lot of high-flying moves and stuff like that. And, they both realized that if I do a lot of high-flying moves, I'm going to get cheered. So Owen he was so despicable the way he cheated, which was awesome.
And he's a guy, he's a great wrestler. He definitely deserves to be on here.
Now, another guy that's a great wrestler, the longest running, not defending right now, WWE or WWF champion, but WWF champion, Bruno Sammartino.
That's another guy I had to fight with Gary about on this position.
Well, I think it's a lock that Bruno's going in this year. So, I mean, it's not 100% lock. So that's why he's on the list. That's probably why he's not so high on the list. Because, granted that he didn't defend the title as many times as CM Punk, I'm just kidding. It was going off that pipe bomb Punk left the other night. But anyways, I mean, the guy held the belt for was almost
11 years.
11 years combined, and that's not a slouch there.
And I think it's an absolute crime that he's not in the Hall of Fame right now. The WWE, WWF, whatever you want to call it, is built on the backbone of Bruno Sammartino. He carried it to a point where they could go national.
I mean, he was the foundation where Hulk Hogan was this first floor. Austin built it, and I think Punk's going to make the leap to be.
Good job. You just taught him how to build their blocks, JR.
Exactly.
Anyway.
You're welcome, Sandow style.
Speaking of guys that are the foundations of what the WWE would become, our number 2 guy is Bob Backlund. A guy that is criminally forgotten in the history of wrestling. I mean, the guy had a long, 6-year run as world champion?
Almost 7.
I mean, the guy that most people know him as the guy that lost to the Iron Sheik, and also the crazy Mr. Backlund character. But Bob Backlund in his day was the best technician there was in the business. I mean, he was a guy that could go out there and work with anybody. He was the Kurt Angle of his time.
And no one had a better work ethic than Backlund. People would, see the way he worked out. Because you look at the way Backlund looked back then, the guy was a brick shithouse. He wasn't no slouch. He was kind of like Antonio Cesaro. Pound for pound, probably one of the strongest men at that time. Some of the feats of strength that Backlund did were also forgotten with the title runs.
And I think he's a guy that's looked at as a transitional champion when he really wasn't. He was a 7-year champion. I mean, he's a guy that Vince McMahon Jr. didn't have in his plans for the rock and wrestling revolution, and he kind of got phased out quickly. And he didn't get the benefit of national cable television like other guys did. And he really wasn't talked about much on television till he came back.
And, he had a mean streak about him when he was a babyface that a lot of people didn't see unless you see some of like the cage matches he's done and things like that. I mean, like I said, the guy was, actually you just said it, he was the Kurt Angle of his day. And there's just
Kurt Angle's the Bob Backlund of this time.
Well, they even put them together for a short period of time, too. I mean, he went from being the humble Richie Cunningham to the creepy, crazy Mr. Backlund.
There you go. Now, before we get on to our number one, if you watch any of our top 10 videos, we always give you guys the best of the rest. These are guys that just barely missed off of the list, but probably deserve to be in there as well. The first one I'm going to go ahead and say, it's a guy that's close and near and dear to my heart, Tommy Dreamer. I think we're coming up on the era when some of the ECW/Attitude /NWO guys are going to start going in, and I think Tommy Dreamer is going to be one of the very few mostly known for their ECW runs that'll go in.
The one we're going to go with is Steven or William Regal, whichever one you want to call him. One of the best technicians of all time. Helped so many guys train. Most of the guys you see on television now owe a great bit of gratitude to William Regal.
And a guy that you actually see on television now, Booker T. A multiple-time world champion, multiple-time tag team champion, won basically every single title you could win in WCW, won most of the titles you could win in WWF. I think he's won all the WWF titles as well.
Who, Booker?
Yeah, he had
never had a WWF title, though.
Okay. But he's won most of the big titles that you could win and had some amazing feuds in his career. Definitely deserving.
Up next, Mike Rotundo, or IRS, whatever you want to call him. One of the best technicians of his era at a point, too.
And one of the best female wrestlers, and a big part of the Attitude Era as well, is Sable. I think she should definitely go in, especially if someone like Sunny goes in. She's just as important as Sable was.
One of the best tag teams that wasn't supposed to make it, actually, Demolition. I mean, they were everything was against them, and they made a rip-off gimmick work. And I actually cheered for them more at some points than I did for Legion of Doom when they first came into WWF back in the day.
There you go. And basically, that's what we have for the best of the rest. Now, I'm going to go ahead and take number one. Our number one guy,
John Cena.
Yeah, that's it. The Macho Man, Randy Savage. Ooh, yeah.
God help me. Macho Man, what can you say? The guy...
Dig it!
The guy could play crazy, but he was a methodical worker. There was tale of before him and Steamboat had that legendary match at WrestleMania 3 that they went over it in their minds for hours before that match happened, and that match was the best rated the best match of all time for 17 years straight.
Exactly. I mean, the guys had absolute classic matches with all the people that a lot of the people on this list. I mean, he's put on classics with Ric Flair, with Ricky Steamboat. I mean, with Sergeant Slaughter, Hulk Hogan. I mean, anybody you could think of that's anybody in the wrestling business. Diamond Dallas Page. I mean, all the way up and down the line, Randy Macho Man Savage made them.
The only thing I didn't like is the rivalry with him and Jake didn't last as long as it should have.
There you go.
That would have been classic because the way both of them work, They could have planned out that whole rivalry, and that thing could have lasted a year.
Exactly. Now, before we get off of this video, there is one omission from our list that's a glaring omission, especially to me. It's my all-time favorite wrestler, Mick Foley.
John Cena.
Mankind, Cactus Jack.
Dr. Thugonomics.
The reason why Cactus Jack, Mick Foley, whatever you want to call him, isn't on our list is we fully expect he's going to go in this year's the 2013 Hall of Fame. More so than Bruno, we expect him to go in. That's why he's left off the list. I mean, so that's the reason Mick's not on here. But basically, if you agree with what we have, if you disagree with what we have, if you think we put someone down too far, someone up too high, if there's someone you think was missing, let us know what you think. Hit us up on our Facebook, put it on our Twitter, put it down where?
I did the long one after we have.
You didn't say down there. Gotta say down there.
Down there.
Down in the comments.
Dumbass. Down there, dumbass.
Down in our comments and let us know what you think. But basically, that's all I have to have for this top 10. Is there anything you want to add?
That's it.
My name is George Coles.
I'm Gary Rhodes.
And this has been Heel Heat.